Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Welcome. We're just getting everybody admitted to this wonderful Israel Independence Day cooking demonstration with the amazing chef Jake Cohen. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome back to Kol Ami. Welcome to Kol Ami for some of you, perhaps for the first time here in West Hollywood, California. We are so happy to have you all with us this evening. And we are just so excited to welcome Chef Jake Cohen. Some of you already may have copies of his book, Jew-ish, his cookbook. Rabbi Egger holding it up there. But I'm going to put a link in the chat here as well for those who might like to order a copy that will support both Chef Jake as well as us here at Kol Ami. So I'll get that link here 1 second. I see a hand raised digitally. That's a good use of the technology. We're going to use the chat throughout the program to ask questions. So you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat for us. Chef Jake's gonna start us out in just a few moments, but if and when there are questions, we can add them here in the chat.
Welcome, everybody. We're just finishing getting everybody admitted to the room, so it'll just be another minute or so. And then, I see Sandy already has her book there. She's holding up her Jewish book. There you go. We're just getting a few more people connected and their audio connected. Oh, Barbara Brown has hers. Yeah, this is good. Well, you are in for a treat today because Jake's, you can see he's preparing a little bit for us, and we're just getting a couple more people in the room with us now. Let's take another minute. So welcome. For those that I don't know, I'm Rabbi Denise Egger, and with me is my associate rabbi, Max Chaikin, and we're delighted to welcome you this afternoon to meet and greet Chef Jake Cohen. Jake is an amazing chef. If you don't know him or don't already follow him on Instagram, you want to do that. Jake studied at the Culinary Institute of America during and after which he spent time working the line at New York City institutions, restaurants, Daniel and ABC Kitchen, amazing. Eventually, Jake transitioned out of restaurant and into food media, first at Saveur Magazine, where Jake led up recipe testing in the publication's test kitchen. And after Saveur, his career led him to writing and contributing to dozens of food publications, as well as serving as the food editor of tastingtable.com and a food critic for Time Out New York. His new cookbook, which just came out in March, is the #1 bestseller on Amazon in the Jewish cookbook section. You see it, Jew-ish, here it is, reinvented recipes from a modern mensch, and it is among the 12 most anticipated cookbooks of 2021 by Delish magazine. It's actually the third of all of their whole list. So you can follow him on Instagram at Jake Cohen, Cohen. And we are so thrilled at Kol Ami. We wanted something fun and unique to celebrate Israel Independence Day. Israel celebrates its 73rd birthday this week. And so Jake is going to take us on a culinary journey to Israel with a classic recipe. So without further ado, let's welcome Chef Jake Cohen.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. And we're going to be having some fun, making some schnitzel. This is a recipe from the book. So my book, like the title kind of nods at Jew-ish. It is a real play on what Jewish food is, what Jewish food can be, how it's evolved, and since I feel like there are different sections. There's obviously like the American influence of Ashkenazi food and how it's developed in America, but one of the things I've really fallen in love with is through my time in Israel, the way that while in America, Ashkenazis make up the majority, and you see like that culture, that food culture really prominent. In Israel, you obviously a different aspect of the diaspora represented, and that's seen in the food. So this recipe is for Schnitzel Fingers, which are really just like a play on chicken fingers, but done in the same way of Israeli Schnitzel. Israeli Schnitzel, obviously different than typical Schnitzel because it was brought over by Austrian Jews. Traditional Schnitzel would be pork. They would do it with chicken, and I think when it hit the Middle East, and you obviously see in the same way of like something like sabich, where something as classic as the Iraqi Shabbat breakfast stuffed into a pita and mixed in with different ingredients from the area and the community. The same thing happened with Schnitzel, and you see sesame seeds for texture and so many incredible spices, warm cumin, things that you really wouldn't imagine with like a traditional European Schnitzel. So to me, it's always been like the ideal fried chicken. So it was not a huge stretch to turn them into chicken fingers and enjoy them here in America. So we'll get right in. I have chicken. I use breast. You could also use thighs if you wanted. But the trick is since we're doing Schnitzel fingers, traditionally if you were doing a Schnitzel, you take the breast, you pound the hell out of it until it's super thin. You have this giant Schnitzel. Truly, like, I love when it's like super, super, super huge. Austrian Schnitzel classically done with veal, also classically done with veal. However, it's also, you could find it with pork, you could find it with chicken, you could find it in many different ways. With this, since we're doing the fingers, you're going to cut them lengthwise into 1-inch strips, kind of like what I have here. And what that's going to do is make it super easy. So when you pound it out, which again, you can use a mallet, I'm just using a small pan. Not crazy. Again, oftentimes you'll find it pounded out super, super thin. I don't want it super, super thin, like paper thin, because I like to stay pretty juicy, especially since we're using chicken and not veal or pork. So really like a nice 1/4 inch. And here are some examples of what it will look like. And any questions you have about Schnitzel, about Jewish food, about the book, about everything, throw it in the chat. Someone said they love the sparkly nails. This is, it's called Everything Bagel.
I love that.
Yeah, I did it today just for this. All right.
Patty, we have two cameras spotlighted here. If you're calling in from a device that's not a computer, you may perhaps not see the second spotlight, but we do have here a sort of a cam on the food as well. Hopefully you can see that.
Swipe to the left, I believe, or just try swiping until you see the counter.
Sounds like dating app advice also.
Truly. That's always what happens. I've done so many of these, and there's 2 questions that every Jew asks me on all of these Zoom classes. And the first one is, can you adjust so I can see what's happening? And the second is, can you freeze this? Everyone wants to know what could be frozen. But we're going to get into the breading situation. This is called SBP, Standard Breading Procedure. Very classic for anything that you want to bread and fry. And it comes down to dry, wet, dry. So we're starting with flour, then we're going to be going into eggs, and then finally our breadcrumbs that we're going to season up right now. So I have 3/4 cup of a panko and 3/4 cup of breadcrumbs. I like the combination because panko's a little bit coarser, breadcrumbs finer, it coats the chicken really well, gets super, super crispy. It's something that is kind of like, you think of how food moves and evolves, and in the same way of like how Schnitzel evolved when it came to Israel, same thing when it went to Japan. You have katsu, which would be like where you would find panko used for the breading and frying. So I like the combo of the two because it just gives it like that perfect crunch. But we're gonna season it up with a bunch of spices to give it a little something extra. So I'm going to throw in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And you can adjust this depending on your likes. So let's say you don't like something or really like something else, go for it. I think I love when people take my recipes and adjust them to their family Especially something like this. Not like a cake where they're like, oh, I didn't want to use sugar, so I left it all out. And why didn't it come out well? We got that, we got some. So garlic powder, cumin, smoked paprika, and cayenne pepper. You want a nice little kick, which this is going to have. And why not use matzah meal? Because it's not Passover. You can use matzah meal. That's a great one. Typically what I find is that with matzah meal, it is very dense. So I would replace the breadcrumbs with matzah meal, but I would still keep the panko because the panko just adds that really like airy crispiness that you get in the breading. But you do you. And this recipe would work perfectly in terms of swapping both out with matzah meal if you were making this during Passover. And last but not least, 3 tablespoons of sesame seeds, which technically I guess would also not be K for P, but I married a Mizrahi man, so it is for us. Okay. Oh, and salt. You need lots of salt. It's the one thing that I use with abandon. So I'm gonna go 2 teaspoons of salt, and this is important because we need to make sure that everything is seasoned. And then we're gonna actually season the chicken itself with another teaspoon of salt. And it seems like a lot, but it's not. And I'm just going to stir this up. And now this is where all of the flavor is. You could already smell everything. It's just like, it's very fragrant, and it's something that's going to be so delicious when it comes out of the hot oil. And then since we're chatting Israel, I guess cumin, paprika, cayenne, garlic powder, teaspoon of each. 2 teaspoons of salt, 3 tablespoons of sesame seeds. Let's see, Israel. Trying to think of like my favorite Israeli foods. It's got to be, I mentioned sabich earlier, but it truly is one of my favorite things ever, especially since my husband's Iraqi. Just the idea of like fried eggplant and egg and amba is like such a beautiful testament to the movement of Jews and how food evolves and cultures diffuse. Amba is a pickled mango sauce that was created by actually like one Iraqi Jewish family, but it's influenced heavily from Indian amchars because Iraqi Jews were like critical players in the spice trade with India and bringing those spices to the rest of the Middle East. So it's something that's super fascinating that it then came to Israel, and now it just gets infused with everything else, and you'll find like sabich pitas, which have that classic Iraqi breakfast, but then also have tahini, which is like non-traditional for a family in Iraq, and sometimes they'll pull srug, which is a Yemeni hot sauce. Sometimes they'll throw in some falafel balls, and really it's just everything comes together. Okay, so we're gonna start breading, and it's gonna go, you always wanna keep one hand dry, one hand wet, or else you'll bread your fingers. And that's truly just it. So we're gonna start with, this will be my dry hand. We'll go in and just make sure it's nice and well coated in flour. And then I'm going to put it right into the egg, and we switch hands. Make sure that's nice and well coated. And now let the excess drip off, and then into our seasoned breadcrumbs. And I like to kind of get it fully coated and then press it in.
I just added the little more information about sabich there for folks.
I mean, we can go on forever about different Israeli
Oh,
food.
absolutely.
All right. So this is perfect. I always go back and forth at least twice just to make sure. And we have the nice breaded Schnitzel finger right there, and I'm going to keep going, and we can keep chatting and doing questions. But I do think it's something that's really fascinating because a lot of people have, I think, a connection to Israel, but with that comes what I think is like a need for us to have a connection to like Jews from across the diaspora and the cultures and how varied they are. Something that was so incredible that I've really only I first experienced in Israel. Now I'm lucky that I actually found an incredible chef in Harlem that is a Ethiopian Jew. But to find the Ethiopian Jewish community and the foods they make, and it's all the same rituals. That's the thing that I think is the most crucial. Is like we're all celebrating the same things. We're just eating completely different menus.
There's a great question about, can you bake these instead of fry them, Jake? Talk to us about that dilemma for those of us that are not as young and fabulous as you are.
I mean, I'm always going to be pro frying when it comes to schnitzel, but this is one of the only times I would say it actually would be great in the air fryer. That's the only thing. You could do in the oven. I would do it over a wire rack on a sheet pan at like a high temp, like 450, just until it's golden and cooked through. But in general, to me, it's just like, you deserve it. Yeah, the air frying. Don't ask me about times and stuff. I don't own an air fryer. I don't believe in that stuff. Yeah, but if you got it, flaunt it.
Too much of a purist for that, huh?
I just don't have the counters. I live in New York City. I don't have counter space for a fryer. My mother-in-law just bought one. We were just visiting her, and she used it for the first time and was mesmerized by it. But it is great, especially if you're looking to cut back on oil use, and or you do a lot of frozen things like, I don't know, frozen sweet potato fries, etc.
So when you go to Israel, Jake, tell us a little bit about, like, what do you have to eat when you get there? Like, what?
Yeah, so I think I touched upon it a few times, but in the sense of it's literally one of the best food capitals in the world. The last time I was there in 2019 in the fall, and I traveled the entire country. So I was in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Akko, down in the Bereshit crater, like everywhere, and every place has a different like kind of vibe because the geography is so varied that naturally what they grow, what they produce, the way they eat, the local communities are also just as varied. So when you think of Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is probably the hottest city just because it's the most secular, in the sense of you just have the most insane restaurants. You have Eyal Shani, who's obviously most well known for Miznon here in New York and Paris and Tel Aviv, but he has some other incredible restaurants there. You have Balangira, which is one of my favorite Ethiopian restaurants ever, as well as in both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, there is Azura, which is probably my favorite restaurant in Israel. And they make the best kibbeh, which is you can find it across the Levant. Different communities have it. There are Syrian versions. My husband's, one of the most famous ones is the Iraqi version, these are semolina meat stuffed semolina dumplings stewed in different broths. The Iraqi version is typically with a sweet and sour beet broth. That's really, really incredible. Then up in Akko, you have like the most incredible fresh fish. So really, it's so varied. In the Galilee, you have in the Golan, you have wine country. So it's like wine tastings, all of it. It's truly something that you go there and you expect to drink the Kool-Aid because you see everything, and it's just something else. It's just something else.
Bess asked a great question about Israel, though. Asked if everything's kosher or can you get shellfish and other. No, there's plenty of non-kosher restaurants, particularly in Tel Aviv, a few in Jerusalem. You can eat well in Israel without eating kosher, although the kosher restaurants are also, there's some spectacular high-end kosher restaurants. And also Israel is really the vegetarian capital of the world in many ways. Some of the finest vegetarian and even vegan restaurants are in Israel.
And it's because the produce is just so incredible.
It is. The produce there is like, we're in California.
I guess
no, it's true. We have great produce all year long sourced here, Jake, but But it is true, the produce in Israel, it is different, and it is phenomenal there.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, they're the provider of produce for all of Europe in many ways.
Truly, truly, truly. Oh yes, Mike's making kibbeh on his thing. Mike actually was the one who recommended Azora with me, and I went with our mutual friend Ronit there for lunch. It's truly, truly one of my favorite dishes to make. Again, everyone makes it a little differently, in the same way that every family makes their brisket different or their matzo ball soup different. So it's something to keep in mind whenever you're learning about foods from across the diasporas, how varied they can be. So for example, I do the kibbeh recipe in my book uses semolina, but that was after much testing because my mother-in-law's mother, my husband's grandmother, would use semolina, but many of his other aunts actually use ground rice, which is another common way to do it, which also makes it technically kosher for Passover for them. But it was just something that was really, really fascinating as I was like learning about this dish and following all these old women with measuring cups and scales, since they don't.
But I also think it matters, like if it's Iraqi or if they were Syrian Jews or if they were Lebanese Jews, like all of the kibbeh is a little bit different depending on
Correct.
where they came from. Like, so like, I knew a lot of Syrian Jews, and they were the ones that used the rice, as opposed to the Iraqi Jews, right?
And you'll find nonstop that it's just like also depends on their movement. And that's the beauty of like, again, what makes Jewish food Jewish when so many of these dishes are not things that we necessarily created, but they were foods that were part of the communities that Jews were part of and tied to Jewish ritual. And what becomes really Jewish is the way that Jews have had to move based on just hardship and expellment. So I think of my husband's family. All the Jews of Iraq were kicked out in 1950 after the Farhud, and they went to Iran, and you start to see the way that affects their cooking, whether that be Iraqi dishes made with Arabic ingredients or Arabic touches, or Arabic dishes made with Iranian ingredients. And that's where I have a lot of fun. That's where people get very angry at me because they don't understand that it doesn't fit into a very clear box.
Well, and that's I think that's really one of the beautiful things about your cookbook, but also about Israeli food. When we think about what modern Israel represents in terms of Jewish peoplehood, you've mentioned it a few times, but I think it can bear repeating that modern Israel is truly a melting pot of Jewish cultures, of the Ashkenazi Jewish cultures and European cultures that came in the early waves of immigration in the late 1800s, to the Iraqi and North African and what we call Mizrahi, Eastern communities that came in the 50s, and to the Russian immigration of the late 80s and early 90s, and you mentioned Ethiopian Jewish populations as well, who are, that's one of the most beautiful things about modern Israeli culture, and of course about modern Israeli food.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's something that's what you only experience when you're there. You just can't. You can see it. It's like you can learn about it. You can watch the documentaries. The next one on my queue is the one about the scuba school that helped smuggle out the Ethiopian Jews making Aliyah and stuff like that. But until you actually see the integration of these communities and how absolutely incredible, it's such a feat.
Jake, are there other recipes in your book something that might think that the average home cook might think is hard, but is actually easier than they think in your cookbook?
Challah. That's everyone is so really like scared of challah, and I just think that it is one of the most important things that every Jew should learn how to make. I think it's representation on the Shabbat table as this vessel, as this conduit of breaking bread with others and the intention around the Sabbath. Like, I think the act of making it yourself is like the ultimate extension of Jewish hospitality that you really don't get otherwise. And I think a lot of people are terrified of bread and all these things, and there's a lot of things that it's a big learning curve. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy. It's definitely something that requires time, but I think it's something that anyone can do. Anyone can make it really well. It just requires a little TLC, a little patience. I would say the number one mistake people make when they're making challah is they're just impatient.
So Rabbi Chaikin, don't you have something to say about challah?
Yeah, so thank you. Bess says Kol Ami challah Zooms were great. Actually, last month we did a challah workshop here. Challah has been one of my projects over the pandemic in my own kitchen, and I can't wait to try your recipe, Jake. I'm going to try it this week.
Love it.
I've been trying to sort of learn also about recipes throughout the last year and reading different recipes and trying different things. And when I saw that your recipe also includes honey year round, it was a recipe after my own heart, because I've been doing that too all year round. For that sweetness of the dough. Yeah, it's just so great.
For the flavor, that's the main issue. No doughs, they weren't sweet enough, and there's a lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts. There are lots of thoughts when it comes to challah, but I will just say that this recipe is the recipe. All right. Clean up, and we are going to be moving over to the stove now to start frying.
Okay.
All right. Boom. So I have a non-stick skillet here. You can use a cast iron, and I'm just going to heat up like a 1/4 inch of oil. We're doing a shallow fry. Again, you're not deep frying. You can feel a little bit better about that. But we do want a nice amount of oil so that we can get a really even color. So I'm going to heat this up.
I noticed you're using vegetable oil as opposed to olive or any other kind of oil. Say a word about that.
The fact is, you want to use any neutral oil. You could use vegetable, you could use sunflower, safflower, avocado. I wouldn't do olive oil. You can technically, depending on the quality, but if you're using a high quality olive oil, the smoke point's going to be too low, and you're just going to scorch the flavor.
Does peanut oil taste different?
Does what?
Peanut oil?
Peanut oil is actually the only oil that will taste different. It does add flavor, very much so. If you think of Chipotle tortilla chips, they use peanut oil, and it adds like a slight distinction to it. Not in a bad way, it's different. But I've been really into avocado and sunflower recently in terms of neutral oils. I'll use it, same thing in terms of my challah dough. I call for vegetable oil, but you could use any of these neutral oils interchangeably. And even with the challah, I'll sometimes use olive oil if it's what I have. So the key part when we're frying is we're going to need 2 pans. We have one with our chicken on it, and then we need one to drop it once they're cooked. I need to grab some more paper towels quickly. So the key is we want to make sure that the schnitzel is going to drain really well. So I always do it over paper towels. Some people will also just throw it over a wire rack to let the excess oil drip. I think if you're really going to get the most out of it, so they're not greasy, your best bet is just a thin layer of paper towels. And then what we're looking for in terms of the oil is the shimmer. So if you just look at it at the edge, you'll start to see ripples in your oil, and that's when you know it's going to be ready. And you can always tell once you drop in one of your Schnitzel fingers, and you'll see to hear the sizzle and make sure it's pretty consistent, sounding like almost like white noise on a TV. And if it's not, then it is not hot enough, and you pull it out quickly and you wait. Patience. Patience is truly, truly, truly the main issue that people have when it comes to cooking.
So Jake, what would you serve with this?
I would serve, I mean, to me, this is like the ultimate snacky type thing to have with other things. I often will do this for game night with my friends, like pre-pandemic. So when I was first testing these out, I would throw these game nights. I would make these and actually the potato leek barekas from the book and have them both and have it be very like just carb heavy, snacky snacks. But if I was sharing this to a meal, I would pair this up with a salad. And you can just have it on the side, like the little gem. The pickled celery and tahini would be great with this. Same with the just like, I don't know, anything you like, anything simple. All right, that's going. And the best part is because you pound them out thin, it's pretty thin. Oh, and someone said for kids' meal, doing Israeli couscous, which is so good. That's become one of my favorite things to make and just like mix in anything. I have a recipe I posted on Instagram that like was so simple. I just roast carrots and harissa with ceylon with date syrup, and then just toss it in some Israeli couscous with some herbs and lemon, and it's done. Can my challah be started in a bread machine? I don't know. I don't use a bread machine. Good luck. I don't think you need one. But again, it's something that definitely probably could happen. Oh yes, that is the sound we are looking for.
I can hear it from here, yeah.
That is it. We're gonna go with 3 pieces. You don't want to crowd it. We're gonna let that go. And it's just gonna take a few minutes per side. Gene, I love your use of all caps. Cohen, you make a pita and hummus ready to make a sandwich. Yes, I mean that's what you think of. I think of Birthright. The things that you think of in Birthright is stopping off every place. It's like, oh, do you want falafel, shawarma, or schnitzel? And so yeah, this would be great in a pita, especially with like all the accoutrements of like chopped salad, all of that. I'd also even dare to say one of my favorite recipes of the book is a play on sabich, where I turned them into bagel sandwiches, just because in America it's not very easy to find good quality pita, but it is easier, at least in LA and New York, to find good quality bagels. So this would be great on a bagel sandwich, and I've actually done this on bagel sandwiches before, and they really always are a hit. Beautiful, beautiful. And you could also do this with dips. You could do this with hummus. You could do this with baba. I mean, I'm pretty purist in the sense of I just think like schnitzel, anything kind of fried chicken, I love with mustard. Any type of mustard, honey mustard specifically. But you can do whatever you like with these. That's my favorite part about the book, and seeing people make all these recipes has been just like how they make them, how they use them, how they make it fit for their Shabbat tables. Or especially in the past few weeks, seeing people cook all my recipes for Passover was super, super meaningful.
Carol, yes, we are recording, so we're going to be able to, you'll be able to come back and cook alongside, cook these Schnitzel Fingers alongside Jacob video on our YouTube channel.
Amazing. So really it's not going to take long, and the key is because we pounded it out thin, the oil is hot. By the time it's golden on both sides, it's cooked through. You do not really have to worry about it being cooked in the center. I can promise you it will be cooked through. You have to be like scorching your oil truly, and the outside would be burnt to a crisp if the inside is still raw. And really we're just looking for this. Nice golden color and flip. Boom, boom, boom. And I love the sesame seeds. They like just speckle the whole schnitzel. And you just get like beautiful crunch, beautiful texture, beautiful flavor, the richness that they add. This is comfort food for me. Let these go, and then we'll just do a few more batches, and we're done. I'm telling you, it's so easy. I didn't even prep anything. I started prepping 10 minutes before we went live, just while we were setting up. So this comes together super quick, very easy dinner, very easy snack for entertaining. You could make these in advance a little bit. I wouldn't do them too far in advance, but like an hour before your guests arrive, clean up, and then just pop them in the oven to reheat. That's great. You can even freeze them. They'll never be the same once they chill and recook in terms of the crispness. As soon as they come out of the oil, that is when they are the best. Always, always, always. Same thing with latkes. Like, people have the nerve to ask me around Hanukkah, like, can I freeze the latke? Can I make the latkes in advance to freeze them? No, you can't freeze latkes. All right. And when you do the standard breading procedure well, you just like, it coats it so beautifully. Everything sticks together. You just really get that perfect schnitzel coating. If you whisk the eggs, the coating comes out thicker. Yes. So that would be more of a batter way. I actually don't like that. I'm not looking for like thick. This is thick enough. Some people will do it, but then you're getting almost into like tempura territory of making a batter. This to me is thick enough. Beautiful. You already ate dinner. I mean, this doesn't count as dinner really. This is like a nice snack that you can have even if you're full. Boom.
You're okay about using the same oil for the second round, huh?
Yeah, totally fine. The fact is, if it really gets crazy, you can go in with a little slotted spoon and skim it. But really, I've had no issue because we're not doing that many batches. You're doing a few batches, and it's going to be enough where everything will get nice and golden, and you'll use the oil, and you'll have a little bit of schmuck at the bottom, but nothing wild. Ooh, schnitzel sandwich on challah. That's what I made for Shabbat like a few months ago. I did a Shabbat live where I had my challah and we were making schnitzel, and then that's exactly what we did, is we made sandwiches.
Jake, is there a recipe in the book you'd say you're proudest of? Beyond the challah, you already said the challah, perhaps.
I would say the cookbook, mainly because it was something that wasn't preserved in my husband's family, and that was super important to me, is to make sure that recipe lives on from our generation and beyond, which is something that I think is super common in Jewish communities in America, where we have seen the secularization of Jews, which I think is amazing and fine, because I mean, I'm secular, I'm not kosher, I'm all of that stuff. But what I think is unfortunate is that with that we can't see like the loss of like the cultural aspects of the stories, the recipes, the things that we still celebrate so much tied to the rituals that we do. And I think that we are the first generation that is kind of reclaiming it. I think the generation right above, there's a lot of inherited trauma, and they're typically first gen American, for at least in my case, and there's a big distancing from Judaism, and as a result we are at risk of losing a lot of recipes as the generation that has the last tie to these stories and this history of us before America is aging. So to me, that is something that I take a lot of pride in, that I think is super important, and that I'm very passionate about.
Your cookbook's done a lot to already preserve so much, even with a contemporary twist on so many things. So do you have another cookbook in you?
Yes. The short answer is yes. I need a contract needs to be signed before I say anything more.
Okay, don't say poo poo poo, our grandmothers would say. No, but no cane of horrors.
But yeah.
But we can anticipate one in the future.
Yes, 100%, and it will still be Jewish.
Oh, this is a good question in the chat. Do you have a bagel recipe in your book? I have not yet memorized it cover to cover to have an answer for it.
I do not, but that will be in book 2.
There's so many recipes,
All right.
so little time.
There you go. Yes, there's a lot of stuff. Again, you can't do it all in one book, but yes, that's something. This first book really was focused on Shabbat. To me, it was around Jewish entertaining, Jewish hospitality, the idea of what we did, because that's so much of how, as adults, we found connection to Jewish identity. Neither my husband or myself grew up with Shabbat in our households, and it's something that we've only brought in as adults, and we do it, again, on our own terms. I'm not shutting off my phone, all that stuff, but it's the idea of having a moment at the end of the week that is sacred and designated for extending gratitude and being present with those you love, and practicing some Jewish ritual, and a space in which we have permission to really explore the foods that I grew up eating but never had made myself, and the foods that Alex grew up eating that I had never had or made before. Like, that is always super special. The next book, we could dive a little deeper. We could go a little bit different. Things have changed. All right.
I just love the sound of that sizzle.
I know.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Frank asks if you have a favorite salad recipe that you'd serve if you were serving this for a meal.
Yeah, it's actually the salad. It's a recipe in my book that I served at this first Shabbat I hosted, and it is a little gem salad with pickled celery and a tahini dressing, and it would be perfect with us.
Jody, I think that the smell-o-vision is going to be in Zoom's next update.
There you go.
So what's the next? Any more upcoming TV appearances? Food Network, other people who want to be big fans, follow you around. Tell us about what's appearances we should watch for.
Yeah, the TV was really fun. I did Today's Show, Good Morning America, Rachel Ray. Right now, if you on Food Network Kitchen, I have an entire course on Jewish baking with a lot of recipes from the book and some new ones, as well as some other recipes that are coming out on that platform. And yeah, there's going to be more. There'll be more TV and stuff. I'm taking a little break right now. It's been a big push, and especially with everything going on in this past year of just kind of putting my head down and cranking out a lot of stuff for work. I'm taking it very easy coming out of it as a way of just enjoying a hot girl summer and chilling. A little bit of this, a little bit of that recipe. That's always what it is. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. And unfortunately, that's why while they are alive and baking, you have to get into the kitchen, and too often that's not the case, because these women, these matriarchs, will make these dishes for well into their 70s, 80s, and there is no need for the younger generations to know how to make it because someone's already doing it. What do you do with the leftover Panko spices breadcrumb mix? I actually don't have that much. What you could do is put it in a Ziploc bag and pop it in the freezer. Fact is, you were dipping in raw chicken, so you can't keep it in your pantry really. But in the freezer, it's great. And then I would just pull it out and add it back in next time I do it, if I do a slightly larger batch. All right.
Here's a question. With this recipe, have you ever used a non-meat, have you ever done tofu Schnitzel Fingers or some kind of other vegetarian version?
I have not. This would work really well with tofu as long as you press it like hell. I've seen people do certain root vegetables work really well. The one that comes to mind that I've seen one chef do that I love was kohlrabi. If you get the big kohlrabi and peel it and slice it into slightly thinner than 1/4-inch slices, you could do the same kind of procedure and it would be delicious.
What about like Beyond Schnitzel?
Yeah, I'm not big on those. I just think it's very processed, and I think there's a place for it. But no one's also done chicken yet. The beef is very easy to do in that sense, but chicken is very difficult. How would you accommodate a gluten allergy? Gluten-free panko, gluten-free breadcrumbs. As simple as that. Truly, it'll come out great. Gorge. And here's our schnitzel.
Wow, that looks like so crunchy good, huh?
Yeah, let's see. Here, I'll give it a test run.
Well, let's hear that crunch, Jake. Get to the close to that microphone.
Oh,
Oh yeah, listen to that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, now we're all ready.
yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, this is amazing and so easy to do. And I think everybody should do it at home and send us pictures of their version of your chicken schnitzel fingers. So if you want to send your copy, you can send it to me at Kol Ami, and we'll put it up so everyone can share. So I'm just going to put my email in the chat. We'd be happy to have your pictures of the foods that you're cooking out of Jake's book. Really fantastic. And you could take it if you put it on social media. Yes, please tag us at Kol Ami Weho, KOLAMIWEHO. We're on Insta and Facebook and Twitter. And would love to share your fabulous recipes that you made out of Jake's new fantastic book, Jewish. I'm going to show it again. We're going to get it up here and allow you. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Max. So Jewish, again, we have a bunch of copies. If you want to make it easy and you want to support not only Jake's amazing work, but Congregation Kol Ami, we would be happy to send you a copy of Jake's incredible book. It's a must-have for your Jewish kitchen and for to be sure to do that. Yeah, then don't forget our annual gala is coming up next week. We have a silent auction that'll start on Friday. You don't have to be in California to bid. So you can learn more about it at our website at kol-ami.org. And we're couple of our honorees are here tonight. Glenn Rosenblum and Sue Igdaloff are three honorees, Stuart Leviton. And but we have an evening of Broadway in West Hollywood with some great Broadway performances, great music, and a bang-up silent auction. You might even want to bid on Jake's book that'll be in the silent auction. That's another way to go. So Jake, thank you so much for being with us, for your time, for your generous spirit. We are big fans of yours. We can't wait to see what's next. We hope you rest up and then write something really, another spectacular follow-up.
My pleasure. Next time in person.
Next time in person. Amen.
Let's do it. We're ready to host you here in West Hollywood to do an in-person. And we'll look forward to trying to make that happen as we all get back moving out of our homes and back into seeing each other, socially distant in person. So thank you again, Jake. Thank you, everybody, for being with us at Congregation Kol Ami. We have a great program this coming Sunday at 4 p.m. Beyond the Binary. If you want to learn more about gender nonconforming folks and the Jewish connection and what the Jewish position is on all of that, we invite you to join us for the last of our third at 4 p.m. on Zoom. Find out more at kol-ami.org. Again, thanks so much for joining us today. Jake, thanks again.
Of course, my pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Take care.